Welcome back to the Fix the Money podcast. Welcome, Bram Kanstein in Holland.
Yes, thanks so much for having me on. I love talking to fellow European Bitcoiners. So excited to talk to you.
Bram, you are in Den Haag, is that right?
Yes, correct. We are.
And you do you do consulting for businesses, for startups, but you're also a Bitcoiner. You think about problems, you think about solutions. Can you give me the 2-minute summary of what you do?
Yeah, so basically I focus on early stages of new digital products and businesses. So basically going from 0 to 1, from people who have an idea, like a lot of entrepreneurs have an idea, to really determining if they should pursue their idea, right? Like if it has any merit. And I think where that connects with Bitcoin for me is that most entrepreneurs pitch their solution, right? Like I'm going to build an app or a platform or a service for this or for that. But then when I talk to them, we usually quickly get into the conversation about, what is the actual problem that you're solving and what is the value that you're bringing. And it's very interesting to see that thinking about the solution is always easier than actually understanding, the value that you deliver and the problems that you are solving. And so that's those are like the types of conversations that I love to have, because I think, motivated and smart people can do anything. But the question is, what should you do and not what could you do?
This is important, right? I mean, anybody could open a pub at the corner, but should you do that? Is there even demand for the pub if there is 4 other pubs, right? Something like
exactly.
that.
Yeah, and also if people say like I have an idea for an app, then I always have to laugh a bit, because I say, why is it an app? An app is a big decision. It could also be a web-based product or a platform or a physical type of service, right? So when people have ideas, they usually jump too quickly to the thing and the shape of the product that they basically want to build. Yeah.
So how did you end up there? Do you do this within your own company? Do you do this as a freelancer?
Yeah, I do this as a freelancer, I've been involved with basically this process of new products and businesses for the past 10 years in different roles, from like investment side to having my own company, to having built lots of ideas. Most of them failed, but I also sold 5. But in the past 10 years, I've also spent 4 years at big like corporate financial corporates in like the innovation department. So working with teams who are trying to save these big banks and insurers, from the changing world, and hopefully helping them adapt. And that's been a really interesting experience, just to be on that side as well.
But now you're on your own, and you build your own digital products, like courses or some stuff like that, right?
Yeah, currently I have so I do this online consulting. I also have an online course where I help people, basically go from 0 to 1, and specifically focused on non-technical people. So not everyone can code or is a developer, of course, but I do think that a lot of non-technical people also have good ideas. So I'm trying to help them and show them, the steps they have to take to go from basically 0 to 1.
That's something that's very important when it comes to entrepreneurship, that basically ideas are worth nothing, right? Everybody has ideas. I have 5 ideas when I walk to the office in the morning, but I have to do something about the ideas. And basically what you're saying is, you don't start with an app.
No, well, like I agree. Everyone has ideas, and I always see an idea as like a combination of all these different types of assumptions, right? Like, who is it for? What problem do they have? What is my product going to be? How am I going to make money? How am I going to reach these people? Like, that all culminates, and that becomes an idea, right? But I've learned that you have to assume that you're wrong, because they are all assumptions, right? And then you have to go out into the world to figure out, okay, can the world show me that I'm actually right and not wrong? And if the world or the potential customers that you want to service tell you that you're right, then you have something that has merit. But if you cannot find that, then I always say, just write down what you've learned and then move on to the next idea, because there's basically an infinite amount of ideas in the universe. And that's also, I think, why I tell people, you're probably wrong, just because there are so many ideas, and that is totally okay, right? So the challenge is to find the right idea, basically.
So you're basically like a therapist for a startup founder.
That's a good description. Maybe I should use that. Yeah, I think I see it as like an outside challenger. Like I root for the person that I talk to, but I also want to be straight and help them to prevent them from wasting time, money, and energy on something that just doesn't have merit. Like that would be a waste of their energy basically, and their ability to hopefully execute on the right idea. I always kind of see myself as that, like an outside challenger for these people. Yeah,
that's super fascinating. And you spent time. Did you have your own startup? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, I've had a few products that I sold. Well, most notably is a product called Startup Stash, which is basically like a big curated directory of resources and tools for startups that eventually got like over 1 million users, and I sold that a few years back. So I've always been just really interested in this really early stage of ideas, basically.
It's fascinating because we all deal, we deal in Bitcoin, which is digital money. We deal in digital products. Now we're doing this talk. I sit in Vienna, you sit in the Netherlands, and even the connection is good today, so that's positive. And I see that you have a very, I like your style. I like your presentation online. You're very clear about what you do. I'm sure this also comes with experience. It says on your Twitter, idea mindset, startup valuation, 0 to 1 growth. So the whole 0 to 1 idea, that's from Peter Thiel, right? Mm-hmm. And then the fourth part, of course, is Bitcoin. So my first question would be, because you outed yourself as a Bitcoin evangelist on June 28th, I think this year, is that correct? Mm-hmm. And you said after 10 years of studying Bitcoin, I wrote a short essay that is my attempt at getting people started on their Bitcoin journey. Oh, and now I realize that this is the longest tweet I've ever seen. I cannot read the whole thing.
No, it's very long.
The essay is in the tweet. Okay, so it's in the pinned tweet, all right? Yeah. But actually, my first question would be, when you talk to quote-unquote normal startup people, how do they react to the whole, you having Bitcoin on your profile and seeing that?
Oh, I love that question. I still think it's like 50-50 or even, less positive, I would say. Like Bitcoin is just really hard to understand. Like I have spent the last 10 years trying to understand this, and still I'm working on this, there's so many dimensions and so many touch points that people can have that, it's just really difficult to almost summarize it in one sentence, right? But I do get like reactions where people just ask, like, "Hey, I saw that you have this. Like, are you a maxi?" Or sometimes people say like, "Oh, this must be a scam. Like, why are you interested in this?" So it's just like their reflection, I always say, on what they know. That kind of works out into what their reaction is when they see that. So there's different levels of starting that conversation. But I think when I talk to people who are in tech or technological minded, and Bitcoin comes up, and I get reactions that you probably also get, like, "Oh, I thought in 2014 this was a thing, right? Like, why isn't this already bigger, and et cetera, et cetera." And then I always say I try in the most friendly way to say to them, like, I know you are a technological minded person, but this opinion of yours is just it's not a valid opinion, right? Like, I spend a godly amount of hours to try to understand this, and I know you have not spent more than 3 hours on this, and you cannot have this this argument basically. Or this, how do you say, like, you cannot even have this opinion. And I say this because I like you and I think you're a technological minded person. Like, please study this more, like, be a bit more humble and just spend more hours. Like last week I saw a tweet of someone who said, like, to understand Bitcoin you have to spend like 250 hours plus. Like, I do think that's true, but that's of course that's also what makes it hard, and not everyone has that time. So I get positive reactions, but I also experience a lot of opinions that are, just not substantiated enough, and that makes it hard to have a conversation about it, I'd say, because then, of course, I'm defensive, or I try to take people along a road and, hopefully pull a thread and get them to at least listen to me. But it's difficult.
but you learn different strategies, right? You learn how to what might work, what might not work, because it happens so frequently. And I think that the interesting thing about Bitcoin is that you tell people, okay, you're a technology-minded person, do the research, but actually research is not enough.
No.
Bitcoin is something you have to actually, you have to basically use it. So actually, in order to use Bitcoin, you have to own some, or I remember when I was in school, we got computers, right? And then we learned what email is, and we got email addresses.
Yes.
But of course, we didn't know what to do with the freaking email addresses. But in order to understand what email is, we had to use it. And Bitcoin is very much the same. But in the moment that you put your money in, of course, this is a whole different ballpark. It's not just doing research; it's something else entirely.
Yeah, it's like a mental model almost, or like a framework of thinking. And I love your example about the email. Like I have the exact same example, but with SMS. We would be on the soccer field, the football field. We would be playing football, and we would send each other text messages from one goal to the other when we were like 12 or 13, where we just had our first mobile phones. And I remember that we all found it magical that there was like this message floating in the air from like one side of the field to the other, and then just coming into this phone. It was just mind-blowing, right? And I think that you're right in a sense that if you want to talk with someone about Bitcoin, at least that's what I'm going to try now, is to just pull out like Wallet of Satoshi, let them download it, and just send them some sats to just experience, how the technology works. And then if they think that's cool, then talk about, the other dimensions that are relevant, that you can talk about, relevant to the person that you're talking about. There's also a part where, and that comes back in that essay, like on my Twitter, where I wrote that essay, I think in maybe like 10 minutes, just because at one point my own thinking clicked for me, and then I was like, okay, now I have to write this down.
That's the great thing about Twitter, and even like this long tweet thing, right?
That's great.
Sitting down to write an article is work, but sitting there with your cell phone writing for an hour, and then you basically just wrote a book and you didn't even realize.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's amazing. And what I put in there is like, I love the concept of energy, and I think Michael Saylor talks about this a lot, but he's already so far mentally that sometimes, obviously you can't really follow him. He's gone, like he really gets it. He's so far into it. But I try to bring it down, that essay, to like, okay, everyone puts in energy, whether it's a venture or whether it's your job, like you output energy into a certain activity or a job, and therefore you get energy, what we call money, in return. That energy, the reward of that energy is captured in that money, and you can use that energy, basically money energy, to purchase things that also cost energy to make or maintain, right? And because there is a system in which we are basically now forced, to operate, just because that is what our countries agreed on, or just the thing that is there, we have to use that. But because the energy is melting away over the years, we are basically being robbed of that energy that is captured in that money. And I like that as a starting point, talking to people. Like, if they see that, then we can talk further, like if you understand that and don't accept that also, right? We can talk further about what is the implication of that. I think Saif Dean talks about, short-term time preference, long-term time preference. Like, if you realize that your value, your energy is melting away, then you're going to spend it now to get stuff and things in return that represent something that you want to have or that makes you happy. And people lose all this long-term time preference because they know that the energy that they could spend on other things just is going away. And that for me has been like really my, I'd say, orange pilling. Eventually, if I look back, like that is what I truly believe. Like, that is actually happening. Like, it's factual. It's not an opinion. It's very there's big rationale involved, I'd say. Like, that is just objectively happening. And I think once I really recognized that, then more and more like pieces started to click, and that's now how I try to simplify it also when I talk to other people. So I try to let them experience the technology, but also, hopefully start a thread on showing them that there's an actual problem, in a system that they participate in, basically.
Is this because you said you've been learning about Bitcoin for 10 years? Is it that you only saw the actual problem yourself recently, or is it that it's the rest of the world is now catching up?
Yes, I'd say both. So in the beginning, for me, like I'm just a digital tech nerd, right? Like I found it in 2013. I saw a video that on Vimeo was called like How Our Bitcoin Explained or something, and I loved it. Like I love, that's also what Jack Dorsey says a lot, like the internet needs a currency, etc. Like that. I was really in that corner. Like I just love how this works. It's so simple. The entire basically paper is just a few pages, and it's a protocol, and like that was really like my point of view, I'd say, as to how I looked at it, like the dimensions that I saw. Of course, I was younger than a student, so like all the speculative stuff was interesting. Like I day traded also in like other shit coins and stuff like that. But like later, basically from conversation I had when I worked at a big bank when I was 30, and I had a mortgage, and I talked to someone who also worked at the bank, and he explained to me that the money in the bank wasn't mine. He said, "Do you know that?" And I said, "I know. Can you explain to me?" And then we had like lunch for an hour, and he explained to me like how all this stuff works, and that when you sign the paper that you basically lend your money to the bank, and the bank just goes off and tries to make more. And if they make more, you don't see anything. And if they mess up, then you have all these bailouts and all these things. And eventually, all the way down the line, you do have to pay that bill, because that will all be in taxes or money creation.
Wait. There was a colleague from your bank?
Yes.
And that's like an older guy, or?
No, like similar age. Like I was 30, I think he was like just a bit older, but he always worked in the bank. And I don't remember like what we were talking about before, but then he just asked me like, "Do you know that the money in the bank is not yours?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like,
does he do that like with his colleagues like every other day?
I don't know. He knew I was into Bitcoin already. I don't know the reasoning there.
Okay,
but
interesting.
Yeah, and so we had that conversation, and yeah, like I said, like I had a mortgage, and I was just participating in the system, And when he told me that, I was like, man, I am very, how do you say that, like unconsciously unaware of how this actually works, but I am participating in it, and that just didn't make sense to me. Like, as I know myself, like I'm a very investigative, rational person, and I was just moving along with this. And so that was really the first thread of, exploring other dimensions of Bitcoin, especially the economics and like finance part, after, I already saw what made me enthusiastic, the technological part. And I think now, especially, let's say the last 2 years, or like post-COVID, whenever COVID ended, by the way, but the other people are catching up, and the actual, symptoms that you saw before with like the whole fiat money system. And I follow stuff that's happening in America, as do you. And I know a bit less actually about what's happening in Europe, but I know that, if it goes wrong in America, then we will definitely have effects here as well. And I think it's just becoming more and more clear that, at a foundational level, this system is just, flawed, basically. It's open to be corrupted, and it has been corrupted. And when I tie that back to how I think about businesses and ideas and all these things, that's exactly the conversation that I have on almost a daily basis about the subject of business and startups, right? Like, you have an idea, but what is the foundation of your idea? And if you cannot explain that to me logically, then how I've also been on the investment side, like, why should I invest in your idea, or why should I use your idea? If you don't know it, then how are you going to convince me? And that way of thinking has also, put me on this path of diving more into Bitcoin on like those dimensions.
I mean, in a way, sometimes normie counter arguments to Bitcoin will be, but what problem does it solve? Right? So sometimes this happens. Sometimes I talked to a banker, like a really important private banker, has hundreds of super rich clients. And he asked me, what problem does Bitcoin solve? And I say inflation. But of course, when I say inflation, I mean the debasement of the money. And he doesn't understand. He thinks it solves, prices going up, which so he didn't get it. But especially because that was before the whole inflation
and
thing.
This already for me is mind-blowing, right? Like, this person should know more than you, right? And you think you are using a basic term to describe something, and he doesn't understand. Like, it's not about being better than another person, but it's just interesting that someone with that much leverage in that world doesn't even talk on the same, you don't talk on the same level about a certain subject, which for me is just fascinating.
I've only met, like, when it comes to people who literally work in the banking system, I've only met one guy who got it, and he was actually on my podcast, but he was like the most important banker in Austria. He gets it. Amazing. The one guy, but he was always the one guy who would have fun with not like going against the grain, going against his peers, and this is also what made him successful. That's why he gets it. It doesn't mean that he will act on it on an institutional basis, but at least he gets it. I don't know. I mean, most people, if you're close to the money spigot, you're not supposed to get it, and I don't even blame anyone. That's why I'm so fascinated by the person that you actually met in the bank. And I when you tell me that you had this lunch where he tells you how it really works, it sounds like this. The lunch that Matthew McConaughey and DiCaprio had with doing the
but it's like he let me in on a secret or something, like it, and that's also. So I've spent 4 years in these roles at two different corporations. Like, there hasn't been anyone there that really blew my mind. That in a good way. Where they would show like, oh, this is parts of how the banks work, or like products that we have, or just argumentation that really made me enthusiastic about a system, or like how it works, basically, right? And when I look at Bitcoin, it's like there's 20-year-olds that are blowing my mind every week with how they talk, almost sometimes in a philosophical way about what is sovereignty, what is wealth, what is ownership, and like all these things. And Bitcoin feels less like a system or a game, like how the banking world feels, as what you mentioned, is this guy in Austria. It's like, it's a game. They are playing a game, and because they are playing the game, they are not subject of the game, right? So that's why it doesn't, all the flaws, it doesn't really touch them, because they are kind of like on top of the game. And in Bitcoin, for me, it feels like it's a way of, it's not playing a game. It's just a way of working together, I almost want to say. It doesn't feel like a game. It feels like, I also tweeted about Bitcoin, like, it's just a protocol. It's just a thing. It's just an idea, right? Like, a lot of things are ideas, and you can adopt it and contribute to it or not. It doesn't really matter. Bitcoin doesn't really care. Like, it's just a thing, and that it's such a contradiction to all the complex stuff that's going on in the banking system, and they are telling you it's great and saying it's transparent, but if you have to say it's transparent, it is not. It's very basic. It's so simple.
And this is one of the most important questions, is when you talk about protocol. That exactly it. That's why the comparison to email and the comparison to SMS is so good, because Bitcoin is not a product. It's not a company. People, you talk to founders, but they think about companies. They think about business models. They think about, how can I make money? PayPal just launched their own stablecoin because they want to make money with this, right?
Exactly.
But Bitcoin is. But when you think about it, when you say it's, and this is also, I think, why the 20-year-olds might be getting it quicker, because our generation. What year are you born in?
87. I'm 35.
87.
Yeah.
So I'm 83, right? So I remember growing up with the internet and seeing these things. We had news groups and like all these protocol innovations that did not stick, right? Even SMS did not stick. Now we use Signal and WhatsApp and stuff, right? But when you think about innovating on the money, of course it has to be a protocol thing, right?
Yes.
Otherwise,
yes, yeah. It's almost funny. I don't know, like. Yeah, it's just so. It's funny because it's so simple that when you think about it, about the fact that it's so simple, and you compare that to the obscurity and hugeness of it now. That's why it's laughable. It doesn't seem real sometimes. I almost want to say that this could be the solution to all this nonsense that is going on, basically, right? Like that's why I have to laugh. Like it is really simple, but it's hard to wrap your head around if you cannot even, like most people, including myself, understand what the current system actually is. It's such a juxtaposition almost, right? Like.
The question is, would you have, accepted what your friend or your colleague told you if you didn't have Bitcoin already? Because only Bitcoin is already the physical act of leaving the system, at least partly. Yes. And then you follow mentally.
Yeah, so what I mentioned, that conversation was one thing for me. And the other thing was, at one point I thought, I'm not buying Bitcoin. I'm just moving what I own, which I basically don't own because I gave it to the bank, right? I'm just moving that to a system that I, after hours of research, just know is a better way to store, the wealth and the energy that I gathered by putting out energy as well. Like once I thought that, then I went all in, basically. Like I am like 80% net worth. I just started
in a bear market.
Oh yeah, over the years, like just more and more. But when I really understood that I actually believe that, I'm just moving. I'm not buying. I'm not speculating. I'm not investing. No, I am moving. I'm just protecting myself and my family. That was it. And then I went, and that was a significant moment, I would say, where that just clicks. But I do believe what you say as well. Like if you don't have it, then, and that's why I also think people need to experience it with like this wallet, and really understand that what is there is something they actually own. That realization is so big, and it is so big because you just never think about it, because especially in our Western world, it just works, quote unquote. We don't have those problems that other people in other parts of the world have.
I mean, yes, but on the other hand, I'm 40 and you are 36, right? I've seen four huge financial crises, right? There was 2000, then there was 2008, then there was 2020. Was there anything in between? I don't know. I mean, not in the West, but outside of the West. So what I'm saying is, I was on holiday with a friend of mine who's a university professor, an economist, history, and he had a book. I didn't read the book. I didn't have time to. He was supposed to do a summary on the book. And it was it was a book from the Bank of England about exchange rate crisis and how to deal with them. It was this thick and had like 60 chapters, and every chapter was a different crisis in the exchange rate system and how to. And I'm like, what kind of shit system is this? If you have a book with 60 different crises that you have to somehow manage, It's absolutely, it boggles the mind, and now we are trying to prolong the system in the dynamic in the digital world when we're doing like the digital euro and the digital dollar and the digital. There are 140. I always have to laugh. There's like 140 different countries that are doing central digital currencies, and then they all have a chapter on we have to be interoperable with everybody else. And it doesn't. Yeah. And that's what Jack Dorsey said. The internet needs the internet needs a currency.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. But what I meant is more like on our side of the world. So even, well, you mentioned England. Like, there's been way more crises that well, at least I'm a more of a normie than you. Then I would say, especially when you focus on this subject. Like, I only know 2008 and 2020. Like that is my understanding of the different like banking crises that have been there. But as you mentioned, like if there's a book that just shows like all these things that happened, yeah, and that is also again something where I sometimes have to laugh. Like if this is like there are books being written about how about all these flaws in this system, and there's people still defending the system. It's just not logical. In any other part of the world, it doesn't work like that. And especially, back to my profession, like in entrepreneurship, like you cannot do that. Like if you start a business and it doesn't work, you have to stop and do something else, right? Like, for me, it's very logical in that way. Like if you thought version A was going to work and it doesn't, move along to version B, right? And understand what went wrong in version A. Maybe you have to scrap the entire concept and move on to something else, or you can pivot to maybe a version B or a C or whatever. But that is how the progression in the development of any system or technology should go, at least in my opinion. So it's almost laughable when you mention a book like that. What is the whole point of a book like that? What I don't know.
Well, we've come to a point where it's just there is so many economists that I mean basically just work in that system. It's Jeff Booth, right? Mm-hmm. He has this whole quote about every job actually being an inefficiency. So if you need somebody to do a job, yes. That's an inefficient system. And this is especially true for economists. It's actually Rahim Tagisadegan, the Austrian economist, he once told me that per capita, the country that had the most economists on the payroll was the Soviet Union, because they needed so many people
to make it work.
Fix the problems that other people. And you have the same problem within the Fiat system. It's people write papers about other people's mistakes, and it's not a system actually. It's just. But I don't think, I personally, I mean, yes, I know many Bitcoiners go very deep into the whole economics, but I don't think that, the masses, quote unquote, will understand the problem by thinking deeply about fiat money. So what exactly have you seen, like, how do you describe, quote unquote, the problem today to people so that they get it?
Yeah, as I mentioned, this is now I'm trying this. I'm now just talking about this energy, right? Like I almost orange pilled my mom 2 weeks ago, which was great because this was this conversation. And I also added like a little bit of this, where did money come from? We went from bartering. If you don't have what I want, we create something that, can store the value, like the glass beads or the shells or the whatever. And then eventually we move on to what became the gold-backed money and then the paper money, etc. So I tied that in with my story about if you do work and you put out energy, you create value, you get value in return, like what I just mentioned. But then at one point, this conversation kind of goes back to them. I also try to ask more, actually, than less explaining, asking more, like, what do you think is money? Like, how do you see that? And eventually we do have to get to a point where they kind of feel the problem before we kind of talk further, right? Like if they don't feel like it should be different or something is wrong, then we cannot really continue this conversation, because then I'm just almost forcing like my idea of how it should be onto their view of the world and how things work and what they know or don't know, etc. So that my goal is always to hopefully get to that point where they see like, that this doesn't really make sense. Okay, like where does Bitcoin tie in, and then it's actually not easy, but I think pretty straightforward to show, the fiat system works like this. It's very open, people print money, etc., etc. And then this is Bitcoin. It's capped, it's closed, it's predictable. Anyone can use it. Apolitical, a-religious, and all these things. And then I put those two like side by side. That's kind of my strategy. But I think I'm at like 9 people orange pilled or something. So I don't know what that score means, but I just try. And actually also like I have a few like rich millionaire friends. None of them I managed to orange pill. And I just, like I had one conversation where I said like, okay, if you want to take 200,000 from the bank, do you think you're able to? There's a guy who sold his company and he has this money in the bank. I said, do you think you're able to? And he says, well, I don't think they have the cash, so maybe I have to wait a few days, but yeah, probably. That's just an inconvenience. Like, probably I will get it. And then I say, but that's my whole point. There's someone between you and that what you supposedly own, right? And thus you don't own it. But then he just doesn't see that. He was like, yeah, no, it's just an inconvenience. And then like, then we kind of like stop talking, because if he doesn't see that, then there's not a real point for me to push harder on that, basically, right? And that's exactly what we talked about in the beginning. Like, if he doesn't think it's a problem, then who am I to tell him he has a problem? It's difficult to get people along with that.
I think when you approach Bitcoin, and the media does a very bad job at this, when you approach Bitcoin as an investment, right? Then it's actually extremely hard to get it.
Yes.
Right. It's because then you compare it to stocks and real estate and especially rich people would do it that way, right? They don't think about they already have money, and they maybe somebody who has sold his company they have proven to themselves that they can build a company.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't even care so much about the money. I would wish for them
also
to not
true.
care so much about the money, because they didn't do it for the money. That's not why they worked 24-hour days, to build a company. That's not how you get successful. You're only successful when you do it for the cause, basically. And maybe somebody who already feels confident in their abilities and confident in their situation, they don't think about Bitcoin in that way, and they don't think about the economy in that way, that they could have problems.
No, I 100% agree. I do think that is definitely the case with my friends in that sense. Doesn't change the fact though that if you sell a company, you get like money for it, then that obviously is the reward for all the energy and work you put in over the years, and the fact that they are probably they probably want to safeguard that wealth, right? At least not eventually have less. In my mind, is pretty logical, but the way to get there and to show them is an interesting challenge. Yeah. What's your tactic then? Like, what do you run into?
I run a YouTube channel and a newsletter and 2 podcasts. So that is part of the the way I do it. I have hundreds of hours of video, and I write, and one of my other things I do, especially when I go on normie television, what I also do here in Austria, I talk about Bitcoin without mentioning the word.
That's great.
Because it triggers people. So you don't mention it. You just say, well, I don't know. That's the problem with fiat money. It gets inflated or something like that. And for me, I never tried to scare people, because I had this phase in my gold phase. So I've been. It took me. I unfortunately did not get into Bitcoin that early. I got into Bitcoin in 2013, but I didn't get it because I was deep in the whole gold situation. So I already thought about the fiat money. I already thought about the but I didn't. I also didn't believe in technology solving that problem. I thought gold would be the logical conclusion. Basically, that we go back to some sort of gold backing of the currency. Well, actually, we have some sort of gold backing because I've got this letter or this email from this guy, and he's right, and he said, but we should criticize the fiat system, but we shouldn't talk about unbacked fiat money because technically it's not unbacked. They have stuff on their balance sheet. That's true, and gold is part of that. But
you taught me that, by the way, in your episode with Breedlove.
Oh, really?
About that made a lot of sense. It is okay, and it is true if they have. You said I think combined in the euro we have the most gold reserves. If you
almost 13,000 tons, yeah.
Yeah, so it is. That is something in case that system fails, right? I do see that, but of course it's different than actual gold backed, right? Before, for example, in the US.
Yes, but I'm not. I mean, I am a big gold bug, but I'm not somebody who defends the gold standard because the gold standard is a rigid system, and the rigid system can only break. So I think that the idea that's in the euro is actually pretty smart. I just don't know if they will ever use it, or if it's already a dead relic of the past. So that's the thing. That's why I'm so critical. I actually like the euro. I'm very critical of the current trajectory that the ECB is taking. Within the world of fiat money, of course, I don't enjoy the idea of central banking itself generally, but I don't know if we will ever see a world without it. I don't know. If we will see it. I mean, my grandchildren maybe might see it. But back to the question of talking to people. I think that the current events since COVID have really helped, and I've realized that it's mostly, it's enjoying the ride, meeting Bitcoiners, doing projects with Bitcoiners, building stuff, having a good time and being relaxed in this strange situation that we are in right now is the most powerful magnet. Seeing that we are having fun and that we have, because we think we do have the solution, and in a way for many Bitcoiners, I think it's actually, it doesn't really matter if Bitcoin long term works as their solution, because they act like they have the solution, so they will act in a more positive way and they will build stuff. There's this story. Nicole, who is a Bitcoiner from Germany, she told the story on a podcast, and I thought it was great. She said there's this guy who won the lottery, and he won 1 million euros in the lottery. Yeah. And then he said, "Oh, finally, I have all the money to build the business that I always wanted to build and to live the life that I always wanted to live." And then he does it. And then 10 years later, he says, "I realized I could have done this without the million. I never needed the million. I could have just done it, but I didn't have the." And I think Bitcoin is this for many people. And I mean, maybe for you as well. You also work on your own now, right? And you do what you think, or not what you want to do, but what you.
What I think is valuable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. It's actually I love this quote. I think that's a real internet quote. The most unlikely outcome is the most entertaining. That's how I see Bitcoin, and I really believe it's either zero, or it's the black hole of all the value in the world. There's nothing really in between. That's really how I think, and more and more I'm thinking it's never going to be zero again. This is a train that has left the station. I don't know how long it's going to take, but the train is on its way. And I once read this tweet, also I think 2014, 15 or something, where I don't know who it was, but the tweet read if you even remotely believe in Bitcoin, and it talked about it's either zero or everything, wouldn't you want a seat in the stadium? And then I thought, yeah, man, if the most unlikely outcome is the most entertaining, I want to sit there in my seat with my popcorn and just see what is going to happen. It is the same, again, back to my work, criticizing an idea and saying something is stupid or it's not going to work is lazy and easy, opening your mind, doing the work, trying to understand how you could be wrong. That is the work you need to do to have an informed and honest opinion as to why something is going to work or not, and With Bitcoin, I just think that is exactly the case, and that's why I have a seat in the stadium to see what's going to happen.
Is it the most unlikely outcome? It's actually a good question. Because when you think about the economy as a market, like as a market economy, a global market economy, and you see this problem, and the problem is, because we talked about problems, right? Problems and solutions. And the problem is that you don't know how to save. It's my 100% my opinion that people are savers. That's what we do, right? That's what you said. Like you
save to build
work.
Something eventually, or do something meaningful.
But that is a natural thing. It's not. We don't invest. We don't go work. We make $100, and then we think about what stock to buy. That's not natural. What natural is we put the $100 somewhere, and when we need them, we take them out. But the problem is that this does not work long term. So we are in this. That's what you said about the black hole. We have in this absurd system where we buy stocks and real estate and watches and sneakers and all this kind of stuff in order to protect our savings. So is it the most unlikely outcome that something would come up on the marketplace that would solve this problem? Because I don't think it's actually the most unlikely outcome. I think it's actually the most likely outcome. Maybe it's not the most entertaining outcome, but it's better to have, because in a way, the financial crisis was. All financial crises come from this problem, because we come up with ever more complex constructs of where to put the money. But of course, we don't need a more complex construct. We need a simple one.
Yeah, no, I agree. So that quote was, let's say, in 2015, why that triggered me. But now I 100% agree that it is way more likely than in 2015 that, let's say, Bitcoin is definitely here to stay, at least. And I really like what you said, because I got this also from, I think it was Tuur de Meester in a podcast I listened to last week. And I think it was him who said, like, and I also tweeted about this, like, battling the debasement of your money is literally the extra job you don't know you have, right? Like, you take risk with, again, right? You take risk and put in value with a venture or a job. And then when you get rewarded for that, you have to take more risk. Literally, you have to take more risk to protect yourself from the automatic debasement that is inherently in the system that, again, you are just forced to use. Not forced in a bad way, but it's just like where we are. So you have an extra job to preserve that, right? And there's also another tweet I sent after I had that thought, it's so funny because I'm very risk averse and pretty much a control freak, but that's exactly why I own Bitcoin, because I don't want to take all these risks and figure out like which stock to buy or, sneakers or whatever you said. Like I don't want to do that. I don't want to take that extra risk. I just want to move what I earned to like a vault in cyberspace that protects that wealth. And I think that's also a fun realization just for myself, that I am literally that person. I am not a trader. I'm way too emotional, right? So I'm a very rational person. That's how I ended up with Bitcoin, basically.
I had the same thing. I mean, I don't want to know how many Bitcoins I could own if I would have just bought Bitcoin instead of trading shitcoins for years that went nowhere. I mean, down, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, funny.
And it's not only for me, it's not only, that's why I know I can talk about this, but I was never successful. Because it's not only that, it's also the psychology, right? The psychology of staring at charts.
Yes.
It wrecks you. And I think that's why it's so interesting what you do. Like you have an online business, mostly working with online businesses in the online business, right? In the online economy, the digital economy. That it's, for me, Bitcoin, and because I am one of those people, Bitcoin gave me the security, not only as a money, but also as a topic that I said, okay, this is going to be what I want to talk about. And I know I can talk, so I can, yeah. Mm-hmm. But now I see, okay, I have skills that I can use within this economy to actually build something and help people. And when you help people, you get paid for it. It doesn't really, in the end, it doesn't matter if you get paid. It's also what I meant with your friend who has $1 million here, $1 million there. They know that they can build something, so they don't have to worry about the future so much, you know. And I don't think it's the money on the bank account that calms you down. I think it's when you see that you can actually solve your problems, which is not easy to see when you are when you're employed, you know, and you have a boss and you have quarterly reviews and all that stuff, you know.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. So it's funny because that's exactly how I think about trading. It's so much psychology, especially like all the shitcoinery going on. And I also definitely dabbled into that and NFTs and all these things. Eventually moved everything to Bitcoin, but that is just like, oh, if this person tweets about it, then I'm going to buy before he tweets and blah blah. It's just it's a psychological game, and that's what I love about Bitcoin. When you think about that protocol idea, it's just a thing. It's just there. It doesn't care about your ego and how you feel, and it is just a useful thing that you can use that replaces so many faulty systems that have flaws in it, and it's just there and it's open and anyone can check it. It's just I think this is a big quote, you know, that people say like it's the closest approximation to truth, but it is almost that. Like it's just so pure and it is just there and no one can mess around with it, and that's why it's so amazing, you know. Like it doesn't care about the ego, no tricks, nothing.
If you have an ego, Bitcoin will absolutely wreck you. I mean, and trading is part of that. Actually, I mean, that was a beautiful quote, and I want to end it there. But I do have one more story I want to tell. So I because you said you look at the tweets and whatnot. One of the bear markets I sold Bitcoin in. I don't even know which one it was, but I remember on 4chan. You know, the image board, they have this biz section for shitcoins and Bitcoin. Yeah. And I swear to God, people like whales or whatever, they are like doing this on purpose. They just send out very, very convincing stories about, we're going to go one leg lower. And there's all the charts and all the convincing arguments. And now I can already see the patterns, right? When it's going down, then there more bears appear when we're already very down. I'm like, okay, no, this is probably the bottom. And so it's you learn, and we all have to, living in this online world, we all have to learn how to navigate this. And I think that the generation of our parents, they are totally lost here. We are a bit better, and the generation after us is already, growing up with this. Because the 20-year-olds today, technically, they have seen a world without Bitcoin, but in practice, they were like 5-6 years old when Bitcoin was introduced. So technically, yes, but they are already the first real Bitcoin generation, and our kids are the actual Bitcoin generation. So.
Yeah. Can't wait for that, to be honest. So it's so intriguing to think about what that could be.
Maybe we do that next time.
I love thinking about that.
Well, maybe we can do a future episode when we talk next time. All right? Okay. So please give us all your handles, all your public keys for Nostr, all this good stuff.
So Nostr I actually set up like 2 weeks ago. I'm still figuring this out. So for now, people can find me on Twitter. I'm Bram K, so BRAMK. If there's people out there who are building an awesome new company or product and want to perhaps work with me, they can check out my website. It's kanstein.co. And 2 months ago, I bought startwithbitcoin.com, which I want to build out into kind of like the same as the Startup Stash product that I mentioned before, but now a directory of resources for people to get started with Bitcoin. So links to awesome people on YouTube like you, but also other learning resources to help people get started with Bitcoin. And that's also where they can actually read
I'll
that.
Definitely check that out. I'll definitely put everything in the show notes. Bram, thank you so much for taking the time. It was really fun talking to you. Do we see you at some conference? Are you going to be at the Bitcoin conference in Amsterdam?
Yes, I'm definitely going to Amsterdam. So if you're there, maybe we can meet up. But yeah, I'm definitely going there. It's going to be my first Bitcoin conference, actually. So I'm excited to see what that's like.
So I don't know yet, but there's a good chance I'll be there. So if I will, of course, I'll let you know.
Cool, man. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. See you next time.
For more content, articles, and podcasts like this, go to fixthemoney.net.